All right. Hey, Amirah.
Hello, Katie. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing great. Great to be here.
Yeah, I'm pumped to do this with you. So to all of our friends watching and listening, we are here to join forces and debunk and address some pretty common business and leadership myths using Amirah's expertise in terms of scaling businesses and operations, my expertise on the leadership and management front. So that's what we're going to dive into today. But Amirah, do you want to give a little bit of a who you are and why you're such a badass?
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I think that's one badass to the other. My name's Amirah. I'm the CEO of Growth Scale Develop Company. I have taken the last 25 years of my career as a senior leader, working for major companies like Citibank, Trulia, Zillow, NerdWallet, and Open Door, and ultimately decided that those experiences landed me to be an advisor to help companies think about growth, scale, how to supercharge their leaders and businesses. And I love to say, haven't met a business that isn't trying to make revenue. And so if you are, that's if you're that company looking to grow business revenue, that's something that I've done a lot, and I like to help companies do that on the journey.
Beautiful, beautiful. Love that. And for anyone not totally familiar with me, my name is Katie Ceccarini, and I'm the founder of Endurance Management Coaching. So I spend half of my time working one-on-one with managers and leaders to strengthen their confidence, competence, and effectiveness, driving business results. And then second half of my time is working in group settings, in live manager trainings, and ensuring that folks really have the tools and the skills to show up as leaders and again drive those business results. Shall we kick into the three myths? Okay, cool. And
Let's do
for
it.
everyone watching and listening, our goal here is that by the end of this video and audio, whichever you prefer to digest, that you are walking away with some sparks of ideas, some sparks of motivation, inspiration, because we're going to have a no BS talk and just get straightforward. Okay, so Amira, first one, here we
Yep.
go, is this myth of you can do more with less. So the question that I want to pose to you is doing more with less a leadership cop out?
Mm. Is doing more than with less a leadership cop out? It's a great question because we hear that all the time, and I don't think actually we're going to stop hearing that we're going to be doing more with that with less. But I think it comes down to a few key things, right? The work is the work. The work has not gone away, right? There's just certain basic things that the work needs to get done. Your clients are your clients. You can't get rid of them. Actually, you want more of them, right? People always want that. And the need for sales growth has to happen. It never disappears. In fact, it goes up and up and up. And so I don't think it's a leadership cop out, but I think what it means is that we need to start reprioritizing what we do and how we do it.
Mhm.
So you need to think more strategically, right? If you've got a book of business of clients, if you got less people to handle, if you are a VP of sales or you're running a sales org, you should be thinking about, okay, who are all my clients and what are the basic needs I need to make sure that the promise that we delivered is going to come through.
Mhm.
And you need to think about the way you've done business. It's like any change in our lives, right? You have to look and say, okay, I did it this way. Now I got to do it differently.
Mhm.
So I also want to just say something that might feel uncomfortable is that that also means that if you're that leader that said it or has the burden of it, you've got to be honest with your employees to let them know that you recognize the pain that is going to come with it and you recognize the direction of where you need to go.
Yeah, yep. And what about the tough choices around there are going to be some things inevitably that need to get put to the back burner or
Hmm.
prioritized. So when we're thinking about working with leaders of how they're thinking about communicating that or managing that change, what starts to come to mind for you?
Well, you said the first part. Prioritization is number one, right? You've got to be able to reprioritize and communicate the priority changes within your work. Then it's important of setting the vision. Where are we trying to go, right? I know you told me to do more, but I have less people. I don't have my colleagues next to me, right? I don't have other resources or tools next to me. But where are we going with all this, right? So set the vision and be clear about where we're going. So when then everyone's doing their day to day, they can reprioritize because they know exactly what the vision is. I think those things are really, really important when you're having to navigate and lead people through it.
And so it's funny you say that the vision and seeing the Golden Gate Bridge behind you. I had a leader back at Yelp who was like, hey, you got to continue to paint the bridge, right? Just because you messaged it once. So once you painted it, you got to go back and paint it again and
That's
paint
right.
it again. So the vision is not a one and done, but as leaders, thinking about that as your North Star
That's
of
right.
that's where you're driving towards. And your job is to ensure that people are connected to it, they see it, but you're simultaneously enrolling them in it so
That's right.
that they not only know where they're going, but they're feeling brought along on that journey too.
That also is really a part of the change management, right? So many times as companies or leaders, and this is not about, I want to just say my name, say this. Leaders got a lot of things on their plates, right? And so this is not about saying what should or shouldn't happen. And my definition of leader is much broader, probably than what most people think they are. If you're managing people, you're a leader, whether you want to be one or not, generally.
Totally.
But you still have something you need to do. Change management is critical, right? Because you're actually, what you're saying is that we have a change, but we're going to manage how we go through it. That
Mhm,
starts with vision. It starts with checking in with people. It
mhm,
starts with making sure you're getting feedback, a feedback loop of how it's going, right?
mhm.
Because ultimately, if you need to do more with less, you ultimately still want revenue, you still want growth, or at least you don't want to lose where your place in line of growth will be. And
Mhm.
if you're trying to still, those are your North Stars, then you need to manage to that.
Yep. Yep. And I think that what I would add into that is then specifically talking to managers who are listening is that just because you were told do more with less, it doesn't mean that you are not able to manage up or appropriately push back, where it is core for a manager to be able to look at their capacity and look at what the team is capable of. And if that means that the plate is now overflowing, to go to their leader and say, hey, hear you loud and clear. Yes, we can do it. And I want to take a look at what the trade-off would be. So
Hmm.
I would propose that yes, we take that on and that we bump this to next quarter. Are we
Hmm.
aligned that that would be appropriate path for this team?
Sometimes I agree totally. Sometimes businesses are moving so fast with so many priorities. And the further you're away from the day to day, sometimes you don't even realize all the things you're asking your people to do. And I would say it's critical for managers to say, hey, I get it. We want to do more with less. I see the vision, but these are the 20 places where I'm needed to lean in, and you just gave me five more. Can you
Mhm,
help me reprioritize if I was to re-identify where you wanted me to place my energy and
mhm.
my bets, where should it be?
Yep.
And I wonder if they have that conversation both ways, then you both get to a middle ground. Because sometimes I actually think people may not know what their teams are always doing or they manage because they're doing it all. Particularly the good ones. They're doing it all. They're doing it so that you look really good, right? You don't even know that these the little things that they might have been doing that might be little to you that are big to them because it's on their plate.
Mhm,
So showing that I think actually adds really great value. And like, hey, I didn't know we were still doing this thing. Is this even necessary? Maybe
mhm.
not. Does
Yeah.
it get us to our big goal? Maybe, maybe not.
Particularly if that North Star is moved. Mhm.
That's right. That's right.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay. It's so meaty that I wanted to spark off into a number of different directions, but we'll
Go for
bring that one to a close. Okay, how about number two? So I am going to look at my paper so I don't miss this question. So
go for it.
number two, that psychological safety is just about being nice. Okay, so the question that I want to kick us off is psychological safety making teams too soft?
Is it making teams too soft? You know, um, can we just go back a bit? Because psychological safety, the fact that we call it, we might think it make people soft or too nice. We should talk about the goal of it is, right?
Yep.
It means that whoever I am in the org, whatever role I have, if I see there's a leak, I feel safe to say there's a leak. That's
Hmm.
it.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yep.
Now, the challenge can be in organizations, leaders should know this, there's political pieces of it. Maybe I don't want to tell you there's a leak because it's not my department. I'm not responsible for the leaks. So I don't want to get anyone in trouble, right?
Hmm.
Maybe I don't want to say the leak because I know that if I say it, my boss likes to be the one to say it, right? Um, so I think we need to just take a step back and say, like, what are we actually trying to solve when we hear this phrase? And I think what we're trying to solve for is creating a place where we can prioritize communicating what people feel are important and relevant to the company, the org, the team, the people, the clients.
Hmm.
You just want to make sure that it's safe. And if I was to put my owner hat on, which I'm sure you could put your owner hat on, I'd like to know that there's a leak happening and that's actually going to deter my revenue and growth.
Yep. Yep. And
So,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
no, go ahead.
So what I think about is where this oftentimes comes up is I hear business leaders, and I actually had a CEO tell me once of, hey, I want you to train my managers on how to become and create a high performing team culture. And in that conversation, I better understood, okay, what does high performing mean to you? Okay. And I said, okay, great. So one of the concepts we're going to need to cover is this notion of psychological safety, the notion that there is enough trust within the room that if they make a mistake, if they have an idea, that they can speak up, admit wrongdoing, have pushback to an idea without fear of repercussions. And he shot me down. And it was such an interesting moment where
Mm,
I see your problem is if you're shutting me down, then I'm imagining in your leadership team meetings when someone's like, hey, what if we do this? How quickly are you like, nope, we've already thought about that. Nope. And now you
mhm.
just crushed any opportunity for innovation, high performance within your organization.
Right. Well, I mean, that's really sad to hear because what I just observed based on what you just shared with me is that you had a leader who felt that they know how to do it. They're the only one, and they're the smartest one in the room, right?
Mhm.
And so that's just a kind of a challenge, I think it is that when you have a business, you've got lots of problems. And ideally, people are hiring really smart people to solve those problems.
Mhm.
And they're going to help unlock those for you. You don't need to do it all, right? And so, but you got to be able to let them feel like they can utilize their smarts and utilize their value that they bring. And when I hear that, I'm also thinking about I've seen with a client where they really were resistant to hearing feedback from a person because of their domain expertise. And I actually challenge them that maybe it's because they don't have the domain expertise that they are seeing the solution differently because they're probably closer to the client experience because
Mhm.
it's that they're not the expert in it. So they're showing you information that you wouldn't know. But you're not going to get more of it if they don't feel like it's been open, it's been heard.
Mhm.
So, is it making teams too soft, psychological safety? No. I think the point of it is that people need to be heard.
Mhm.
Now, does it mean you need to agree with it? Maybe not.
Mhm.
You don't have to do everything that someone says. If I did everything my kids told me to do, who runs the house, right?
Yep.
But at the end of the day, right, you want to be able to foster communication because sometimes another person's observations is the exact thing that you need to solve for.
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
Yep. And
yeah.
I think of there are certainly things that managers and leaders can and should be doing that intentionally foster this.
Hmm.
It's also so interesting to think about how easily it gets squashed, right? So just that example of, I mentioned, oh, we should cover this. Nope.
Hmm.
Okay, well, now I'm going to be less likely to speak up here, right?
That's right.
So if we talk about some of the ways business leaders and managers, you're right, because managers, whether they like it or not, they need to lead as well. Uh,
Hmm.
some of the things that I think about are one of they need to be vulnerable first and often. So
Hmm.
we oftentimes think that vulnerability is, oh, I'll be vulnerable when I trust them. It's actually the other way around of being vulnerable is like supercharging your path to trust. So the simple phrases that a leader can use, like, hey, you know what? That's something I hadn't considered. I'd love your eyes on this.
Right.
Or, oh, you know what? I'm recognizing I'm not as close to this as you are. What might you recommend?
That's right.
Or, you know what? I'm just not on my game today. Forgive me. Let me process what you're saying.
Hmm.
Those are simple vulnerability cues that send a message that I trust you enough to be vulnerable, that then you receive that as, oh, she trusts me enough to be vulnerable. I can be vulnerable in return.
Hmm. And I love that because all you're also saying is I value what you have to say,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
I can listen to a wonderful girlfriend all day long and value, ask I'm going to difficulty. I go to one girlfriend, I go to another. They all have different varying opinions. At the end
Mhm.
of the day, I'm going to make my own decision because it's what my decision I need to make. The same applies in work, right? You actually want to craft and identify people within the org who you can get valuable feedback from because they will then tell you things from a lens that you just won't have.
Mhm.
And there's many ways leaders and organizers can do it. I mean, I hear this all the time. They're like, "Oh my goodness, my revenue's down. I don't know. I think it's the sales team." I'm like, "Is it the sales team? Have you asked the sales team why? Have you asked them why their revenue growth is down? Do you have any feedback loop?" I mean, I know what metrics say. We should absolutely do look at the metrics for sure. But has anyone sat anyone down to understand and unpack some of what's happening? What
Yep.
are we hearing? We might be hearing that there's a competition shift that's happening, and we're sensing that the data can't tell us at this point in time. Maybe it's too early on. Maybe we need to do a little additional work on that. That's something that's happened. We're like, oh, actually, people are not getting their revenue because of this other person. We never heard this. This was a new person who's emerging in the market. Wasn't on the radar. Now we've got another project to work on. But you've got to build in this place where people feel like their their value
Mhm.
in what they bring
Mhm.
is way bigger and we want it and we crave it, right? Like you got to make people feel that way.
Yeah.
And secretly, what I find, I love being an advisor is that because I'm not on the org, people tell you stuff all the time that they would never tell anyone. Um, I find that I look at them like, wow, you would ride and die hard for your company. This is crazy to me because if your org knew this, like I want them to know that you would do backflips for you,
Uh-huh. Yep.
but they
Yep.
don't know it. They didn't unlock it.
And part of that unlock too is then the positive reinforcement, right? So you create that feedback loop. You go and ask in this example, the sales team, right? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? Give some color behind these metrics. And then whatever they say, uh, using the words thank you,
That's
right?
right. That's
Thank
right.
you for highlighting that. Thank you for pointing out a blind spot. Thank you for bringing up something I hadn't considered.
Hmm.
Those two tiny words and how
Hmm.
that creates positive reinforcement that it's okay. And this is a trusted space to let us know where the leaks are.
That's right. That's right. I get the question sometimes is like, what do you credit your sales leadership for? And I have to say, it's that I really wanted my team and leaders to remember that we're working with people.
Mhm.
Because at the end of the day, those people can work really hard for you. And when you give them really big, hairy, audacious goals, they will come through. Now, you don't want to align it just to a person. That actually gets really dangerous. You want to align this to the culture of your organization. And that's very, very different, right? And so it goes beyond sales. Like when I'm in the ops side, you can do the exact same thing, but you have to create that space for people so that they can have it. And I remember doing group chats, one-on-ones, um, sending the thank you notes to someone that I heard someone say something in a comment in a group meeting, because what you're actually signaling is, I value what you brought. And
Mm-hmm.
that alone unlocks a whole level of trust. And I would just honestly say, maybe in this environment, you probably need to do it more.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe a takeaway, an action item for our listeners and viewers is to pause here and think of what are signals that I am intentionally or inadvertently sending.
That's
So,
right.
right. So there's an intentional signal to, ping someone, after a really strong meeting, right? That's intentional. But what are the unintentional, inadvertent signals that you are sending when you are meeting with people, when you are engaging and reflecting on that to then make sure that there's alignment between what you're intending and the way you're showing up.
Right. I love it. Everyone's got some homework to do.
Yay, I love homework, right? Okay, so now let's get to the third one, which is
Mm,
hiring more people will fix your operational problems. So, kind of the question to kick us off here is why do some companies scale their headcount and not their results?
mm. Well, I'm reflecting back to a time where I ran an org, it was smaller sales org, and we had phenomenal results. And the revenue per person was high, and they were like, we can't figure out this, what's this shift, right? But what we do need to do is you need to do the exact same thing, but you need to three times your team. And oh, by the way, we need to do it in 3 months
Next
before
month.
the beginning of the year, right? Can you hire,
Need to
can
do
you
it yesterday.
hire right? Can you hire another 100 people? And I was like really thrown off. And I wish in reflection that I pushed back a bit, but I didn't, because finance had a number and we had to hit the number. But I think that the reason why companies scale, because they see some nugget of gold and they want more gold.
Mhm.
The challenge is when you scale, you see the negative goal and you think that adding more people will solve and get you there, is that you're actually discounting all the other things that made that person successful. So just as generally looking at, the tenure, the training, my gosh, or the lack thereof training that was required, right? The type of leads that this person received, right? The type of tools and resources, the amount of oversight, that was a big one, right? With a scale that big, we ultimately had to hire new folks that could not coach and manage them up because A, we didn't really have great training at the time. We were building. And two, those leaders were not as experienced as the other ones.
Yeah.
So I would actually say we wasted money versus grew money, because if we had built it a little bit slower, and built it and was a little more patient, we would have gotten exactly the goal that we're trying to build, but save ourselves some time.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I think that's the biggest thing I think about when people are like, I want to scale, just give me more people. It's like, but that might be the answer, but let's look at all pieces of it and make sure these people are set up for success. And that generally is a missed opportunity.
Yeah. The thing that stands out, and probably because of my bias and my experience, is the training and development component of it, right? That when you are, company starts, you get your first sales reps or your first CSMs, whatever it may be, and it's all hands on deck, and everyone is listening to one another and sharing the wins, and there's regular knowledge sharing, and then you get to a point of, okay, now you are, and I remember being in an organization where our sales team was hiring like 50 reps a month. And and luckily the training was actually very strong in that capacity. But I think what I generally see happening is that then you promote someone to manager and they're managing one or two people, but they're maintaining their IC responsibilities. That right? Of like, yeah, the nodding head of, you don't, they're not developing their people because they've got their IC responsibilities. And it's just such a missed opportunity. So what do you start to think about how you maybe strike that balance of, okay, we're not going to do that in 3 months, but here's maybe what we get if we do 5 months. And
That's right.
right, so what comes up for you?
Yeah, I mean, adding time absolutely helps. But the other thing you just said, which really was also a part of the core issue, is we didn't invest. We thought that, I think sometimes people think of the head count as the end all be all, and they forget um, the management complexity that supports that. And so it what happens is we had a great balance. That was the thing. We had a great balance. That's why we're hitting those peak numbers. But when we added more people, that number could not survive because we didn't have enough managers at that level to be able to support those individuals. So
Coach
when we
their
started
people.
adding people, that's right, we added coaches, then we had added directors. Like when we started adding layers, there's still a time, right? They've got to get familiar with the organization. They still have to get familiar with the culture. Sometimes they're not great fits, right? And then a pet peeve of mine sometimes is when we promote within because of our needs, and we don't really assess skill and talent and fit well enough, um, or we don't give them the tools so they can match and support them so they can have it. Then ultimately it causes another distress within the team, because now this person who doesn't have the skill sets to really lead and drive change can't, and then the group that's underneath them ultimately finds other opportunities,
Yeah.
right? And then you're just pouring in more people in a problem without solving it, and we think that the problem was the person couldn't do the job, but maybe it's not. Maybe they didn't have the organizational structure. And I'll take that out of sales, and I'm just talking about on an ops side. I've seen the same thing where we're like, this project like we're going to build, we're going to create, and we're going to solve these projects, but we don't have the right leader. Like this leader is not creating great cross-functional synergies. They're actually hurting it. And so you've got to make sure that when we're hiring and growing, we're scaling, we think about putting support around leadership growth training. And I'm kicking the CEO. You're the expert in this. I'm a huge fan of L&D, and primarily because I understand that if people are invested in getting better, they're better for the people that they lead.
Mhm.
So, like, you become a better leader because someone's invested in you or you've invested in yourself. Either way, it's a win win. Again, I'm looking at what are the outcomes. And when I go back and I sit down knee to knee with a CEO and I'm looking, I'm like, your strategy is brilliant. No one can execute this. It's brilliant. It's great. But this person doesn't have the skills. Why you got turnover? Why do you
Mhm.
have why can't they get people to do the work? Right? So what's missing? And that's where it's hard.
Yep, yep.
It becomes really hard.
Yeah, finding where the holes are, then we run into a little bit of the what got you here isn't going to be what gets you there. And sometimes it's different processes, sometimes it's different systems, sometimes it's different people that maybe the people that got you here may not be the same people with the skill set to then get you there. And then
That's right.
investing in the peoples and the systems. And I think that's where so for everyone watching and listening, what sparked Amir and I getting excited about this conversation today was that you can't do any of this without people, right? Like, and as much as AI takes up the headlines and so on, that there are people still at the foundation of being able to have great organizations and great companies and
Mm,
investing in people and believing in them, creating an environment where they can succeed is how then the business succeeds.
that's right. I mean, I haven't met too many people that have had to call, a big company or an airline company and excited to talk to the automated person to make and solve their problems. And I haven't met anyone. If you find someone, send them to me, right?
Oh,
But generally, right? Generally, everyone's like, oh God, just let me press zero because I want to talk to someone who can actually think strategically and help me think creatively about this. But then what actually stinks is when you get on the phone with someone for whatever the problem that it is, and they don't have the intellectual ability to really like think through a problem because they have to say that way. It's because they haven't been invested in, right? And now with the way the world is, and I think a lot about the client experience, the client journey, clients get frustrated and they share that information. Unfortunately, in many ways or different ways that you may not want them to.
Mhm.
And right now, I think if you're a business owner, you need to be thinking about how do I maintain customers and
Mhm.
increase. And if you're not thinking about how do I maintain my customers, then you need to plan for people to leave, right? Because there is going to be someone out that's going to try to outdo and do a better, have a better experience. So we need to really invest in the people.
Mhm.
We have to, and we have to invest in the process as well. And of course, invest in the product, but you got to invest in the people because they power all of that.
Mhm.
They
Yeah,
do. Even if they're using an AI tool, it's the people.
right. People, people.
Bad, bad prompt in, bad result out. Period.
Yes, yes, yes. Beautiful. Okay, so this was super fun. Hit on three very different elements. Anything kind of standing out to you or anything you want to close on, Amira?
Gosh, I mean, it was just really fun. I'm glad that you were like, let's just do this.
Let's talk
We
about
were
it.
literally, let's have the conversation and like share our conversation. Really is what happened. I just think it's important for no matter where you are in the org, and I want to speak to like two segments. I was just thinking about this, right? If you have the responsibility to hire, attract, um, and grow people, and your business is trying to make money, like really take time to think about, do I have everything that I need to be successful? And if I don't do it alone, right? Like you can leverage your resources, your people, your talent, advisors, like people to help you get to where you need to be. You don't have to just say, I'm horrible, so I'm just going to say horrible. You can do amazing things, right? And then I want to say, because I think to people that work for people or for companies and places, is that, you know, great people generally still have options in this market, right? People still love to work with amazing people.
Hmm.
And amazing people is not just the content of what we know or the technical capabilities, but it's how we work with others and how we continue to elevate ourselves. Again, take advantage of all the resources that your company has for you to be able to continue to invest for yourself, advocate, ask for it. Every time I see someone has PD budget and they don't use it, I'm like, oh my gosh, please use it, find some way to make yourself a continually amazing, because at the end of the day, will always be looking for amazing people. And then you're going to get to a part of your life and your career, and you and I have experienced it, where people that have worked with you when they're building and they need to create an amazing team will tap you.
Yeah.
And then the world changes very differently when people are like, oh, is Katie available? Oh my gosh, we need Katie to help solve this problem. No one
Hmm.
has time to waste finding the right person. They want their people. And I used to think in my career, like, that's so unfair. They bring in their people. And I'm like, they're bringing a trusted person who built a brand.
Hmm.
That's what they did.
Yeah.
So I just say, invest in yourself, invest in your business. Don't do it alone.
Beautiful. So well said. You're reminding me of another leader that I had at Yelp that he would regularly say, "Hey, look around the room. You're going to work with these people at some point in your future career," and how true that really is. So, really being mindful of the brand that you are building and the intentionality behind that. I think the thing that's kind of standing out to me that I actually end up talking about with a fair number of my clients is this notion of being and doing and finding that balance. So, being, or actually, I'll start with the doing of, we're generally pretty good at creating the checklists, the to-dos, the project plans, right? And managers, that's a lot of doing. I got to have the feedback conversation. I got to talk about goals. I got to revisit these expectations. That's the doing. And we often lose sight of then the being. And the being is the how you show up and your presence and your connection and the way you inspire others. And frankly, the being is the leadership, and the doing can be seen as the management. So finding that balance of not losing sight of, as you are building a company, that, yeah, get the right people, have the right plan, understand where your gaps are, and then also of who are you as a founder or an executive or a leader within this organization, and how do you want to be showing up?
Right.
essence and your
and
being.
recognize people are looking at both.
Yeah. And it's often the being, particularly the more senior you become in your career, that becomes your undoing.
That's right. That's right. And even for our early stage founders I work with, the being is what the bet is on the being. It's not, you didn't do anything. It's the bet that investors are making is who you are and how you show up. That is it. And so never lose sight of that, because when you have your company, it may be investors, then it's early stage clients, then it's your first round of new team members, and then you're running a big org potentially. And that's the thing that people remember and feel the most. So
Yeah.
don't lose sight of that.
Nope. Well, that feels like a good point to kind of put a period on today.
That's right. I'm so excited. This is a great conversation. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
saying,
I feel
let's
like
just
we
jump
could.
on, let's share this with the world.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, Amirah.
You're welcome.